itself doesn't tell you every single layer of technology that's in a vehicle. So that's one of the things that make this hard to study for just anyone to do academia or just any researchers. So what was unique about this study is that we gave them the very specifics for every single VIN, the coding that breaks down whether that vehicle is equipped with rear AEB, pedestrian AEB, the I'm sorry, I'm gonna use a lot of acronyms, but automatic emergency braking, blind spot monitoring, driver attention alert, all of these different stackable layered systems, they were able to look at that data and then study it against their insurance claims. And yes, come out with those great numbers of it's essentially preventing or reducing about 40% of their insurance claims. Fantastic news. Absolutely love to hear that. Also not only validating, but helps me as an internal safety advocate within a car company say, hey guys, we need to keep doing this. We can't decontent. We got to just keep going. And those are the data points we need as engineers and product planners to reinforce how important it is that we do continue to innovate and add new technologies on in that layered way. It really all started with automatic emergency braking. That's where we start. That's our baseline. That's really where the industry committed about a decade ago. And everything since then has been stackable. And so, yeah, when we get the full suite, we're getting upwards of 40% reduction. And I want to have this conversation in 2, 5, 10, 20 years where that number grows further towards 100% reduction. That's the vision.
That's fantastic. And when I read the study and I was spending time down in Virginia with Matt Moore,
Right.
he's a great guy. So I'm ahead, Jennifer, I think. I'm not going to do that all podcast. I'm just joking around. But when I was down there, that was the light bulb moment for me when I saw that 40%. And the neat thing about, let me explain a little bit about what Hildy did with this data. Um, they're getting data from the insurance industry, and it's about claims in general and how much claims cost and how many claims per vehicle VIN. And they're sort of comparing what's in the car and what the experience has been. It's not whether or not the systems were even in use. It's just, was the car equipped with that equipment?
Right.
And so you can imagine a even stronger result if people were actually using this stuff the way it was meant to be. Is that a fair commentary, Jennifer?
Yeah, so it is equipment data. One of the things we'd love to grow into in the future is knowing how people, if those systems were either on or off, but also the settings. Because within any feature, let's just use lane departure warning as an example, you have always the visual alert, but then you also have audible, haptic, the combination of audible. I'd like to really know if the systems were on and what the settings were as well. And that's one day what telematics could potentially unlock for us. But for this study, it simply was the vehicle equipped, yes or no. We don't know if that particular VIN or code had it on or off or what the settings were.
Yeah, so I told you in anticipation of going down to IIHS, I stopped by a dealership in Connecticut, met a wonderful salesman, and he took me out for a test drive. He was talking about the engineering side and how Mazda's philosophy about this is we want to make sure that we're not pushing certain technology into the driving experience. We're here to assist. Is that a fair characterization?
Right. So Mazda's driving philosophy for as long as I've worked here and many, many years before that has always been supporting, not replacing the driver. And that's illustrative even in our cruising and traffic support system, which is our SAE level 2 for those who are following those levels. It's the adaptive cruise control and lane centering. Mazda has intentionally required that the drivers leave their hands on the wheel. So that's a part of how we want to have that more cooperative steering, not fully take control. We still honestly believe, truly believe that the safest system in the car is still the driver. So keeping the driver in control, supporting them with these alerts, interventions when needed, but still always making sure that the driver's put first, supported, not replaced.
Yeah, my experience, I mean, I drive other tech-laden cars, um, and it has taken over the driving experience. When I drove the Mazda, um, the thing that was foremost was you have heads-up display,
Right.
you have hands-on, you also have a driver monitoring system that's looking at the driver. Can you explain sort of that environment you get when you're in a Mazda?
Right. Yeah, the driving should be fun, right? It should be enjoyable, but still supported. So what we've done for that SAE level 2 technology is we've built in things that are more of a safety assurance. Even though we characterize that adaptive cruise control and lane centering, that active driving assistance, we do characterize that as assistance. It's not necessarily a safety technology as much as it is a convenience system, but we want to provide that convenience to our customers and keep their eyes up on the road with the active driving display, hands on the wheel, supported, and then also eyes on the road. So that's what the driver monitoring camera is looking for. It's looking for inattention. It's looking for long glances away from the roadway, even head direction and turning, so that it can monitor that. If you do take your hands off the wheel or eyes off the road for too long, that vehicle that you were driving, Mike, it is capable of doing an emergency escalation series that you would find very uncomfortable. It's really meant to re-engage the driver. If the driver does not immediately respond, that emergency escalation system, it's called the unresponsive driver support system. It will a series of very loud and annoying alerts. It will start bringing the vehicle to a stop in the roadway, and it will even call 911 because at that point in time, it's assuming you're incapacitated. So that's where we are building in that philosophy of we want to be tech forward, but we also want to be really conservative when it comes to risk. So if we are going to deploy an SAE level 2 an active driver assistance system, we are going to pair in these safety assurances and have that unresponsive driver support. Worst case scenario, we have a vehicle that would be errant and like just going down the roadway with cruise control on. That's what we want to avoid. And that's why we've built in things like the driver monitoring camera and required hands-on steering wheel.
Yeah, so Jennifer, you were kind enough to send us some video demonstrations of what's in your showroom. So Christian, if you could bring that up, and I'm going to ask you a question, Jennifer, while we're waiting for Christian to get that up. But from the standpoint of the industry, you and I were talking about parts
Right.
and this new consortium. Can you explain what that's about?
Right. So what I was mentioning earlier about that vehicle equipment data. So the VIN doesn't get you all the way to the equipment data. What made doing the IHS HLDI study so easy is that Mazda had already sent our VIN equipment data to PARTS, the Partnership for Analytics, Research, and Traffic Safety. I know that's a mouthful, but if those who are listening in want to see that, we can drop a link. It's or just Google NHTSA PARTS, and that is the whole industry. Not well, not the whole, the majority of the industry. I think we're upwards of over 80% of all car companies. About 10 auto manufacturers are sharing the same data. They're sharing it with a group called MITRE. And MITRE is a third party that is aggregating that data and doing some NHTSA funded research using the entire industry's data. And what we're finding is that the overall percentage of vehicles that have now have these equipment, the advanced driver assistance systems, they really have deployed. Like we have this great chart where it's, 95% of vehicles have automatic emergency braking. There's over 70% have blind spot monitoring. So we're able to study not only the equipment across car companies, we're also able to pair that with the crash data, just like IHS paired it with, or sorry, HLDI, just like HLDI paired it with insurance claims. What the parts program is doing is pairing the equipment data with state crash data and seeing how the overall crashes are getting reduced. And so the big number there, Mike, is closer to 60%. It's like 50% and change, but climbing closer to 60% in how effective specifically automatic emergency braking is at preventing rear end crashes. So the big story there is that the technology that we're about to show you with this video clip, it's not just technology for technology's sake. It's preventing crashes. It's preventing insurance claims. It's working. So we have to keep doing what we're doing.
So, Christian, if you could hit go, and then Jennifer, if you maybe talk through
Sure.
this video a little bit.
Absolutely. So this is showing the new sensing technology. This is using the new Mazda CX-5, but this is common within the industry, the types of sensors that are on vehicles today. So we have the surrounding cameras. Those help with things like your 360-degree view monitoring. And some of this technology is also helping with parking and backing up. Of course, we have backup cameras, ultrasonic sensors, but the technology that's doing the majority of the work is that front sensing camera that's built into the front stack. We also, of course, have the driver monitoring camera. It's an entire network. This is the network of wiring harnesses and the control units. Those are the radars that are showing out now. Side radars power things like blind spot monitoring. Love it. Standard on all Mazda vehicles. We also have the ultrasonic sensors that are being shown here. Those are really for parking. Those are standard now on the new CX-5, and being able to show that there's just pretty simple technology between camera and radar fusion that is doing the majority of the work when it comes to crash avoidance. It's having that front sensing camera, having those front sensing, and then four corner side radars that can help. Those are the things that do AEB, but they also do other things. So they're important sensors that have multiple jobs, and that gets us to the overall efficiencies and why you also see that layered stacked approach to all these new technologies that are now showing themselves through the insurance data and through parts effectiveness data that, yeah, they're working. It's great. It's great news. It's certainly encouraging. And like I said, we're going to keep doing it.
And the rear automatic emergency braking feature was one of the things that really took this frequency number and drove it dramatically higher.
Right.
And I remember when I said to Matt, why did rear automatic emergency braking have such an impact? And he just sort of, he's so down to earth in some ways. He goes, because we're not good at backing up.
Right.
And but it was last. But it was listen, I think most people think of as accidents as forward facing. This is backward facing technology. So maybe if you could talk about rear automatic emergency braking.
Right. There was a great conversation there about, well, why did rear AEB kind of come out in the industry after front AEB? Because it turns out to be so much more effective, especially in the insurance in dropping insurance claims. We do get in a lot of parking accidents. I think those come up in insurance claims more than anywhere else because they're the most common. And they're also really they're expensive. Once you damage a bumper, it's not only embarrassing, it's expensive, right? So I think that was part of the data. It's just that the frequency of those is pretty high in insurance claims. But the reason that the industry and Mazda and the industry at large did front AEB first is because we weren't looking at reducing those expensive parking lot accidents. The goal there was reducing the most injurious, the fatal accidents, and those are typically the ones where you're going much higher speed. So that was the focus of the front automatic emergency braking voluntary commitment that was brokered in 2015, 2016. And that's why the industry, and you see that the deployment of front AEB came first. And now we're seeing that you're also seeing the rear AEB come in. It was really because we were focused on what's causing injuries and fatalities. And then now we're like, well, this is also really helpful in those parking lot incidences where you don't see so many injuries or fatalities, but you do see a lot of inconvenience and cost.
Yeah, we'll get to that forward facing aspect of this in a minute, but the pop-up you just saw is if you have questions, please write them in. And my partner Dirk Pastrick, who's sitting but stifling a cough right now, But he'll be pushing those questions out to us. So as you type them in, we'll be we'll be teeing them up for us in the audience. Uh, so Jennifer, why don't you? I think almost everybody understands that automatic emergency braking is generally a forward-facing technology because rear AEB is almost a different creature. Um, and it came about more voluntarily than even the forward-facing automatic emergency braking. Can you talk about how that consensus in the industry led to um, general adoption of forward AEB, if you will?
Right. Yeah. The forward AEB voluntary commitment was brokered about a decade ago. And the reason that was really from a voluntary effort is that we were already seeing through our own research, and I think that's something that surprises a lot of people who don't know a lot about the automotive industry, is that this isn't driven by federal regulation. And in fact, most great innovation isn't. There aren't any federal regulations on these technologies that are effective on today's vehicles. There is a couple of them written, or even in final rule that are now being contested over whether or not these technologies, how they should be tested and regulated. But the important part to note is that they've been already deployed voluntarily because automotive companies are committed to reducing crashes and to having that zero fatality vision. That's something that is core to every car company that I've had the opportunity to talk to. It's not just Mazda. Mazda's vision is for zero fatalities in our new vehicles by 2040. And we're starting to see that, especially in other countries. So internationally, in countries like Japan and even in Europe, in our newer vehicles. And you see this in the insurance data too. Newer vehicles are safer vehicles because they have these crash avoidance technologies in addition to additional in-cabin occupant protection technologies. They have more advanced sensor suites. They're not getting in as many crashes to begin with. And when they are, no one's dying. So that vision of being able to avoid crashes to begin with, get towards zero fatalities, which is really the combined goal of many car companies, that that AEB, that forward AEB was the first step to get there. And it's what started equipping our vehicles with that front sensing camera. And then the front sensing radar. And then the side radars. And then you can see that how the story just evolves to blind spot monitoring, lane departure warnings, and now things like these adaptive cruise control systems that also have the lane centering. We haven't reached a point where we're calling that safety technology. We haven't seen a marked improvement in crash rate for some of those systems, although there is research ongoing. And I think we'll get there. I think that we will get to a point where we can start calling those features safety features too. And when we get there, when do we start making those standard, right? That's the decision I'm always working with within Mazda, is when something is starting to really proof out and be a safety feature, like front AEB did, when do we then deploy it as standard? The most recent one that Mazda decided to put as standard equipment on every vehicle we sell is blind spot monitoring. Now, there's no federal regulation, no guidance, no requirements there, but that was a voluntary effort by not like Mazda's made that choice since about 2022 model year. There are other companies that are doing that too, and I think that you're going to start seeing that more often, that these are not being driven by the federal regulations. We're seeing that our customers want it, they benefit from it, it's in line with our vision for crash prevention. Let's get it out there on all our vehicles.
Yeah, I think about a year ago we had Vin White, who was the Undersecretary of Transportation um, uh, in the last years of the Obama administrations, and he made this observation on our podcast. He said industry could do a much better job. He wasn't making an excuse for the federal government,
Mhm.
but we have to make it, we collectively have to make it easier for the regulators to do their job.
Right.
And so, the forward-facing AEB is a good example of that. Insurance Institute for Highway Safety plus NHTSA got the manufacturers together and said, hey, this technology makes sense. Why don't we do it by agreement as opposed to regulation? Is that a fair characterization?
Right. So, and then what's really important is that once those technologies are out in the field and we are ready to regulate them, the industry is very supportive of regulating technologies that are proven to be have a proven safety benefit. But that regulation needs to be simple. It needs to be efficient. The testing cannot be overly complex or burdensome. We want to make sure that the regulation is written as intelligently and efficiently as possible. That's where the regulation really has their job. We have the hard job of deploying the technology, making it work really well. The regulation should come in and then solidify that so that there's no additional bad actors that come in or like maybe a new car company that's not part of the voluntary agreement that comes in and starts selling vehicles without that technology. Their role is to set that level playing field. And it often, and it really should be after the technology has reached a point where it's been deployed, it's been studied, and it's been proven to be safer. Then we get the regulation. What we often struggle with is the wording and the regulation and the testing and the compliance and how that will be enforced. That's where we've gotten stuck in some recent conversations. I hope the new administration, I see some positive benefits going forward where we will hopefully see better written, more succinct testing procedures so that when we do regulate these things, we're not over-engineering it.
Yeah, a parallel to artificial intelligence. I listen to podcasts all the time, and I was listening to a couple people that are noted as tech savvy, business savvy. And right off the bat last year, when chat started to pick up some steam and people started to talk about AI like it was a new neighbor, the almost immediately it was like, well, we have to regulate the AI. What does that mean? You can't regulate something, and you're going to come up with rules when you don't even understand what it is that's being built. So, I mean, I certainly understand that chicken and the egg component to this. And I think forward AEB is a really good example because as you start to bring in driver assist technologies like, um, lane keeping and adaptive cruise control, you really need AEB to fit into that package. What they weren't, AEB wasn't built as part of that package. But um, um, so if you could speak to that, Jen, I understand we're having some video problem, but I think that's a problem for everybody. And but I think the words are coming out. So did you understand the question, Jennifer?
I do. I think I got the question. Things like adaptive cruise control, certainly SAE level 2 technology, hands-on or hands-off. Those are all building blocks from originally the front automatic emergency braking. When we started putting the cameras, just like that video showed a second ago, when we started equipping vehicles with forward-facing cameras and forward-facing radars. And you can do all of this with just cameras, or there's a lot of different technology solutions. That's the nice thing about when you think about the regulation piece too. And they're really written to be technology agnostic. Any sensing capabilities you're adding to your vehicle, whether that's LiDAR, radar, camera, or a fusion of all of those things, that then sets the stage. So now you're putting all this new hardware on, and you go from AEB to SAE level 2 technology. That's essentially been the evolution. You're adding the sensing technology, and our engineers, of course, are going, oh, what else can we do? What other things can we add to the functionality of the system now that we have the front radar? The front radar is what you also need so that you can do cruising and traffic support or adaptive cruise control, those types of technologies. They were all really just the evolution of having front automatic emergency braking.
Yeah, but automatic emergency braking wasn't because we had adaptive cruise control and lane keeping.
Other way around,
It-
right.
right. It was no, we can make automatic emergency braking. Oh, by the way, we're going to start to let the car do more. Um, and so it was just the evolution of a lot of different technologies that are all pointing at a much safer driving environment, but they couple. So
Right.
I found that an interesting part of looking at the history of automobile safety engineering, if you will. I'm going to, Jennifer, if you just excuse me for a moment, I'm going to just, please, guys, you have a chance to um, follow up with questions during this webinar. Feel free. Also, if you want to schedule some time with me, there's a QR code where you can get either Dirk or I for, we can't do it for everybody that's attending, but we'll take, the first 10 who want to schedule some time. We're happy to have this discussion off with you offline as well. Um, Jennifer, what do you think? What do you think the future of Mazda's approach from the standpoint of training drivers on how to use this technology? Because there was some reference in the IIHS Hildy paper about some drivers don't know how to use it.
Right. So a lot of that comes down to intelligent interfaces and having a overall good human machine interface where folks learn different ways. There was a great study put out by AAA, I think just last year, about how some people learn well through a manual or having some online training. Others really just need to drive the car and experience it hands-on. So we try to do a combination of all of those things. You can look up things on our website. There is a whole online owner's manual now that's is also using AI, and so you can just type in things and it'll give you information right back. You don't have to read the whole manual, not that anyone ever did. Or you can actually just sit in the vehicle, and our screens have been able to provide now more information about what systems do what. So you see that directly in the vehicle, and then you can drive them and experience that. For me, that's how I learn how to use these systems best. I can see them in the screen in the car. I can see where the icons are. And then because there's no regulations in this space, every car company is doing it a little different. Every model is doing it a little different. So the best way to learn about these technologies is really to drive them. And when you're in a new vehicle, take the time to scroll through your menus, to change your settings, to really invest in this very expensive product that you've just purchased and learn, just like your iPhone or your laptop, learn what the systems are there to do and what they're really not to do. Because a lot of people still misunderstand that these driver support features are not driver replacement features. And you do require your hands on the wheel, your eyes on the road in many cases. Now, there are cases too where you can take your hands off, but learning those technologies, getting behind the wheel, understanding what your vehicle does and does, and very importantly, does not do, that, in my opinion, is the best way to train customers on what the systems are really meant to do, is getting that experience. But people do learn in different ways. I tend to be a hands-on learner. I want to drive the car. I want to know what it does and doesn't do. But yeah, we offer all of those different layers of support, whether it's an owner's manual, in dealership training, or just driving it.
Yeah, I think the part that is worth really doubling down on is um, drivers need to understand, not just through training, but also feedback from the car. And again, I was blown away as to how well informed I felt inside the Mazda cockpit when I drove the car a month ago. And I certainly I knew exactly what was going on, even though I never drove one. So it was easy for me to adapt. There was this cross-pollination where I'd get a little confused at times of, wait a minute, that's not how it works in my other car. But anyway, I do. If anybody is really want to see a different experience, because sometimes we talk about some of the cars that are really pushing the envelope on technology. Um, just go to the car shows. Just go to dealerships. Say, please show me what you're doing. And that's been really important for the work I do. And one of the things that came up earlier, Jennifer, as we were getting ready for this session a couple weeks back, I was talking about a colleague of ours who's in this space, and she worked for an OEM, and she said, you know, we gave up on trying to sell safety years ago.
Mhm.
And you said that's not our pitch. We are about safety, and we do sell safety. So, and the rewards are showing up. So can you talk about what Mazda's, look is from a safety perspective, compared to other car manufacturers? I know you're not trying to be an elitist here, but you should be.
No, I mean, I'll definitely pat Mazda on the back here because this has been an area where there's been a really, and it's not just in talk, right? I love backing this up with third-party recognitions, safety awards, data. This is not just talk. This is us showing what our vehicles can do and how they can perform in the field. So Mazda was recently named the safest new car brand by Consumer Reports. Consumer Reports is a very respected organization for all types of consumer products, and that definitely does sell. That's a huge selling point. People, especially young families, just one of the things that's great about the technology that's in all of our hands now is that we have really educated consumers. So you can ask AI, you can ask your chatbot, what's the safest new vehicle on the road? And I have tried that recently, and Mazda is right there. So do your research, folks, if you're looking at new cars. So the reason that Consumer Reports named us as the safest new car brand in the US is that we have some of these technologies that we've been talking about, not just the ones that have been voluntarily agreed to, not just forward AV, but also things like blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert. We have those as standard equipment, in addition to getting all of the top ratings in those crash tests from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, as well as some of the top ratings in their crash avoidance tests. Getting a top safety pick plus award is like the highest of the highest safety bars in the US. It is really challenging. You have to have, it's a series of six different types of tests, three crash tests, three crash avoidance tests. And if you get all of that right, you can stack up to either a top safety pick or top safety pick plus award. It's really hard. We're working on it right now. We've just launched the all new CX-5, which is our midsize SUV. Sorry, small SUV, just two-row SUV. It's one of our top sellers, and making sure that has a top safety pick is my job of the moment. I'm working really hard on that. We just did the crash test down at IHS 2 weeks ago. Can't tell you guys what the rating is yet, but it'll be publishing very soon. And then we need to work on the crash avoidance test too. They're hard. They're pedestrian. At nighttime, those tests are really difficult. And then we also have to do some tests involving the back of a trailer, avoiding a car target in front, both centered and offset at 50, 60, and 70 kph, and also a motorcycle crash avoidance test. So if we do all of that really well, crash test, crash avoidance tests, this for the new CX-5, Mazda could be getting our 100th Top Safety Pick Plus award
Wow.
from
Wow.
IHS later this
Great.
summer, maybe early in this fall. So I'm gonna have some kind of big cake cutting ceremony. I don't know, like for the big 100. I hope. I can't count all of those things yet, but there's still some testing to be done. But that's just been a really wonderful part of representing Mazda and talking about safety for this company for the past few years. We really do need to notice that there's maybe some other brands that have been synonymous with safety, but for the past 3 years, Mazda has debuted as the top safety pick plus leader in the entire industry. And that's intentional, right? We've been doing that as part of our safety philosophy of trying to get towards zero fatalities, equipping vehicles with crash avoidance technology as standard, and doing absolutely bang up jobs on our crash testing. There's some new crash tests that are so difficult, but we have gotten good rating, the top good rating in every single model we've tested to their newest, hardest crash test that has the rear occupant. It's a front crash test that really takes into account rear seat safety, something that we'd also been looking at doing internally. And that's why Mazda is the leading car brand in safety right now. It's a lot of work, but it's not boring, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, when I hear people talk about adoption of uh, consumers, and they one of the things they usually will talk about is the turnover of the fleet.
Right.
And like, I started working in this space in 2017. It was like, yeah, it's going to take, the average age of a vehicle in the fleet is, 24, average age is 12 years. So some cars are out there 25 years. And there's all these Debbie Downers, if you will. about how much this would work. And I would counter with, oh, yeah, when I was putting my sons, who are now 40 and 36, into a car, I wouldn't have put them into a car without airbags. I could have gotten a cheap clunker, but it was going to be a cheap clunker with airbags. Um, it was minimum threshold for are they allowed to get in the car. So in my mind, safety is always sold, and as these cars get safer, I just have to imagine safety will continue to sell. Uh, and listen, let's face it. I mean, Mazda wants to be a good corporate citizen. It wants to be a driving force behind reduction of deaths. The goal of that 2040 goal. And again, I want to emphasize how important that is. You have to have a goal. So zero deaths in your car by 2040. And so those are all really good corporate citizenship concepts. But in the bottom line, safety is so, um, and then we have to be aware of what's in these cars and then use the technology if it's really going to be as safe as it can be.
Right.
So I don't know if you can comment on what I just said, but
For sure. So a little bit more on the whether safety sells. I think that's a important part. And you were talking a little bit about when you first put your kids into vehicles. I'm doing that right now. I have a 17-year-old. So of course he's in a new Mazda vehicle driving, and that does give me a lot of peace of mind. A lot of parents, people in general want to put their teens into like the oldest thing in the driveway, and I understand that they don't want them to damage a new car, but IHS just published their annually, they publish along with Consumer Reports, a list of affordable, best, and good recommended vehicles for teens. And those are typically even used vehicles that can go as low as, $5,000. It's looking at making sure that they have these standard safety technologies and good ratings in the year that those vehicles were released. So not all vehicles are the same. You certainly don't want to give your kid the oldest vehicle in the lot. You want to give them something that has some of these automatic emergency braking systems. Kids make mistakes. We all adults make mistakes. We want to put them in the best hands possible and give them the best equipment possible. And we do see that more and more with consumers that are educated, that are shopping for their teen drivers, for themselves, that they're looking at these ratings. And affordability is another big piece of that, making sure that's what one of the core things that Mazda's been working on is that we're able to offer those top safety pick plus, what people do want, and it is very important. And yes, it does help sell vehicles, putting those at an affordable and accessible rate. So we have vehicles that are below $30,000, even closer to the $25,000 range, brand new vehicles that you can get that have top safety pick pluses, and certainly used vehicles. You can go, sub $10,000, $5,000 vehicles, and the used vehicle that are still on the recommended list by IHS, where you don't have to spend a ton of money. So, like you said, you can still put your kid in an old beater, but it doesn't have to be an old beater without airbags. And today that means an old beater, you don't have to have it that doesn't have crash avoidance technologies.
yeah, I wouldn't. Fortunately, I don't have to make that choice anymore because they're buying their own cars. But I
Right.
wouldn't put my kid in a car without automatic emergency braking. I think this is sort of the one last question I have, and then we're going to turn it over to Dirk. He can ask some questions, or he can also frame the questions from the audience. But the technology in these cars is obviously reducing frequency, but it's also driving up severity. A simple rear end collision used to be $500. In fact, when you were at NHTSA, there was a 5 mile an hour bumper test, and then before that, it was a 250 $250 bumper test. So in other words, I said 500 miles. Yeah, I mean, you had to build a car that there was a certain amount of you could tap it but not damage it. Um, uh, we're now in a range where that same kind of backing up into the front of my car could really cost me a lot of money
Right.
and ultimately cost others. So maybe talk about the expense side of safety, and I'm sure you care about that.
Right. Well, aside from that affordability piece that we were just talking about making sure that the vehicles are affordable to begin with, I think that like from societal safety, well, our goal is just it costs a lot of money to repair a car, but more expensive is repairing a person. So we really want to make sure that we're thinking about that holistically and not just, yes, sensors are expensive, but that is an investment in our societal cost of preventing crashes and injuries to begin with, because people in hospitals is the most expensive set of scenarios you can really get to, especially in the insurance industry. And Matt Moore does a much better job talking about the data in this case, but I'll try to reiterate some of the things that he has talked about here. He really explained to us that that severity number, what we're seeing in the severity with the cost, is also because we're preventing the majority of the smaller, uh, like the smaller cases in which the cost would have been low, the ones where it's just those low speed front AEB, rear AEB. We're seeing such a reduction in insurance claims that the cheap ones are getting eliminated from the data. So you're cutting out the cheap ones, and really all that's left is those more expensive, like, oh wow, that's a heck of a crash. And when you do have those larger, higher speed crashes, you've now damaged a ton of expensive equipment. And yes, that is going to overall sway the severity in the cost higher. But the good news here is all of those other crashes that were lower speed that would have been
Right.
cheaper, they've been eliminated from the equation. So it's just
And
naturally pushing it to a more expensive
yeah,
set of
and that's a
data.
fantastic point. It's you have to balance out the expense, the severity of this technology, but also it's dropping frequency.
Right.
So, somewhere there's a benefit, not to mention the fact that we're not having accidents, which is probably the most important part.
Still
So,
a win. Definitely still a win.
yeah. So, Dirk, turn it over to you. You got some questions from the audience, or you got questions?
I do, Jennifer. Just first want to thank you. It's wonderful to be able to really put a human voice to. We read a lot of this data and we see a lot of this engineering information, and it's nice to know there's really passionate people kind of behind the scenes that really do care about these issues, that really do care about safety, and that's really pushing to try to move the space forward so that we all have a safer environment going forward and our kids have a safer environment. So first, just wanted to thank you for the passion that you obviously bring to this space and to this topic. Did want to just, I guess, follow up on a couple questions, just go in a little greater detail on some of the things that you've touched upon. The first thing I just want to ask you about is Hildy, and you touched on this, I believe, very early on, the kind of the layered approach, which is, really looking at how ADAS features work as a package rather than in isolation. And that compounding effect of the safety results from that. Just interested in knowing, did Mazda intentionally engineer for that, or was that something that they were kind of surprised as well when they saw that compounding effect of how these layered systems really result in something that's the whole is kind of greater than the parts, I guess is one way of saying it, right?
Right. I think we knew it like intuitively, but we hadn't seen, we saw the Hildy study just maybe a few weeks before it was published. So we were having to digest that ourselves. I'm like, oh, it made a lot of sense to us intuitively, but we had never seen that before. So that was wonderful that IHS and Hildy were able to come and validate that understanding. And our approach has always been, well, you get the hardware on the vehicle, right? And then you have a software that's just always going to get smarter and smarter. And now, yeah, with our most recent vehicles, we also have this ability to do over-the-air updates. So even with the same hardware that's on there, we can also start putting more intelligence into the software. It's that iterative approach. It's not just the layering and stacking. What we also saw in the Hildy data was that the newer vehicles were even better at reducing the insurance claims and reducing the severity of crashes. We see that in the parts data is another validating source. With that one, instead of the insurance claims, again, it's the actual state crash data. And a cool thing that we're getting out of that and that same stacked approach is that for AEB, it's it was pretty effective. It was already effective in the 20, that also goes back to 2015 model year. But then once you start looking at just the most recent model years, so like the 2024, 2023, where we have the data there, it's even more effective. So it gives us more validation that we're stacking the technologies together and that we're also improving over time. That the intelligence that we're building into the system, we're going in the right direction. So these big numbers, and Mike had talked about that 40,000 huge number that we're up against. It's starting to do these little declines in certain areas, and we want to keep that going. It's giving us that glimmer that our generation, right? That our generation is doing the right things. And the next generation that's going to come in, we really want to empower them to keep doing what we've been doing. Stack these technologies more, bring in additional sensors, bring in additional technologies. We've done a lot of engineering out and around the vehicle and the sensing, the outward sensing. That this next generation needs to start working on the inside of the vehicle, that in-cabin experience. We've got these huge problems ahead of us. Risky driving. We still have people drinking and driving, distracted driving, impaired driving. There are still a lot of people who don't wear their seatbelts. We see that in the crash data. If you're killed in a crash these days, there is a good chance it was because you weren't wearing your seatbelt. So we have to in-cabin monitoring, in-cabin sensing. I think that's the next frontier of how we're really going to get to zero.
All right, very well put. I mean, just understanding that this is a constantly, the technology is constantly evolving, the educational levels of the operators and drivers are evolving, and all of those, and the OEMs are evolving, and being able to incorporate all of this together to, you know, the bottom goal, try to create a safer automobile, right?
Right.
And as you point out, I firmly believe safety does sell. I have two teenage daughters, and I feel the same way. So, another question, just quickly wanted to follow up on is
So,
that
hey, Dirk, before you ask that question, again, scan this code for anybody who wants to sit down and have a chat with us about this topic or anything else related to this stuff. And we're happy to schedule some time. Again, we can't do it for everybody who's in attendance, but we'll say the first five that do, we're happy to spend quality time with you. Go ahead, Dirk.
And so just wanted to ask you a little bit about, as I mentioned, I have two teenage daughters, and it just amazes me how quickly they understand the technology in these new vehicles. They know how to use it, they understand it, they know the purpose of it. Whereas my mother, not so much. Even myself, not so much, even though I'm in the space. So are there things that OEMs can do, in your opinion, that can help possibly bridge that gap for helping drivers, particularly maybe older drivers, understand how to leverage the newer technology and how to maximize the safety benefits that are being offered?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it really is like, different strokes for different folks, right? And that's what we need to do in the customization of our systems as well. So we have vehicles that have the nice big touch screens now. I can imagine that there's some older people that don't want that. That's okay. There's other products. All of these things can coexist. We can have products for everyone. We don't all go to the store and want the same food. So it's just the same thing, right? You don't all go to the store and want the same car. And in any vehicle lineup, we have that ability to do customization. So if you like, I don't like having the audible alert when I'm doing blind spot monitoring. I like the visual. I love to have the light in my rearview mirror, my side mirror, but I don't want the alert. And that's one of the things we can walk through, especially with the older adults. There was a great presentation I sat through recently with AARP, where they were talking about how older adults really appreciate the adaptive high beam system because it's hard for them to know when to turn their high beams on and off, but they really need the additional visibility, forward visibility. So making sure that feature is on your next vehicle if you're looking for a vehicle for an older adult, and that's set properly so that they can get that benefit. But yeah, I mean, just everyone needs to spend that time in their car, new cars, used cars, understanding what systems are in there and which systems they want. A lot of these things, you can turn them off. You can customize them. You can set your alerts to visible, audible, haptic. We've offered those customizations within the vehicles. It's just getting in there and changing the settings.
Great
So,
answer.
Dirk, before you get to that next question, so one of the other QR codes is for the Institute of Mobility Education, and it's an organization that Dirk and I founded.
So I know we're running a little short on time here, Jennifer. I could probably ask you questions about this stuff for hours, but since we are short on time here, the last question I think maybe just, if I recall correctly, I believe the data for the HLDI study ended around 2023. So
Right.
obviously internally, I'm sure you've seen more updated data. I'm just curious. I mean, obviously what we've talked about, we see increasing benefits, but can you add just a little bit more flavor to what you expect in the next round of data, the next study to really reflect with respect to the current trends and the current technology?
Yeah, we can't wait to get Hildy and Parts more data. Those are two organizations we'll be getting our equipment data up through 2025 model year too, very soon. And we're hoping to see just more overall exposure of our technology so that we can get some more statistical significance around these data and start seeing some benefit to systems like traffic sign recognition and driver attention alert. Those are some additional systems that we haven't spoken a lot about here on the podcast, but ones we really need to understand better and really hopefully classify as safety systems in addressing some of those risky driver behaviors, things like driver distraction for our driver attention alert and traffic sign recognition, which helps drivers see and understand when they're speeding. So getting at things like speeding and distracted driving, we're hoping to see some benefit in the systems that we've deployed as we get newer and newer systems out on the road and as we get more exposure of those systems over time.
Great
Hey,
stuff, and
Jen,
thank you
we're
again.
we're yeah, we're definitely bringing you back for another round. And
Great.
uh, fantastic discussion, and we'll bring you back for another round because there's obviously so much more we can do. That assumes, of course, you'd like to talk a little bit more about this, which I suspect you would. We'll see what the future studies look like, but
Can't wait.
we'll yeah we'll encourage others to keep your eye out for Jennifer and the further following of the travels of Mazda towards zero,
Let's
zero
go. Let's
deaths,
do
and also
it.
how the automotive industry as a whole is embracing things like safety. So, Jen, thanks so much. Great conversation. And Dirk, thank you again for participating. And we'll kick it off to next month. And we have a very exciting announcement about who's going to be on next month's podcast. But I'm going to leave you guys sitting and waiting for that. And anyway, thank you for your time, guys. And fantastic. Love the attention and drive safe. Zoom, zoom, zoom.